and welcome. I've often been asked how it came to be that we have a reserve price in this country. And the answer is this. As we were perhaps in the middle of the last decade, helping people with their bonds, and the banks were routinely selling people's houses for R100 or R1,000, or at least far more than 50% off, even 75. In very many of our defences for them, we would argue that there must be a reserve price, and it was unconstitutional not to have a reserve price. And what most people don't know is that at that time, most judges, or some judges anyway, were dead against us, and they thought that it was absolutely fine not to have a reserve price, and it wasn't unconstitutional not to have one. But one time we went to the media, and we went on carte blanche, and I was interviewed for 2 or 3 hours by carte blanche, although it only ends up as 10 minutes on the screen. But that seemed to change something in the legal establishment. And so what happened was that the Reserve Board, the Rules Board, which sets the rules of the High Court, decided that maybe they should look into this. And I think they were maybe going to look into it anyway. I think it was maybe on the cards, but because of this, it was a rather different investigation. And they said they were thinking of doing this and that, and I wrote to them and I said, no, you must go much, much further than that. So there was a huge inquiry at the Emperor's Palace near the airport. And there was lots of judges there, there were lawyers, there were sheriffs, and the banks themselves, of course, who never have accepted good change, positive change for the people, even when it doesn't seem to me that it actually costs them anything. But there was a big debate, and I was given a chance to speak. There was others there as part of this movement, King Sibiye and his group being notable, the late King Sibiye. He's worked tirelessly on this. And at the end of it, there was a vote on whether there should be a reserve price or not. And virtually everyone in the whole legal, political community that was there voted for a reserve price. It wasn't binding on the Rules Board, but obviously it swayed them. Because a little while later, there was a new rule, 46A, in our constitution, in our rules of court, which said that there may be a reserve price. Then later that year, later the next year, 2018, there was 2 cases, one in Joburg and one in Cape Town, and they actually extended the rule, and they said no, except in exceptional circumstances, there must be a reserve price. And from that day to this, there's almost always, the banks tried to trick you around it. Oh, what I meant to say was that the only people that voted against changing to a reserve price were the banks themselves. It's amazing how bad that they can be. That even in the face of all the evidence, and in the face of how different, and I'll talk about this in other videos, how different our country is to the rest of the world, and how we haven't really regulated our banks the way other countries have, and I mean that regulation in a positive way. It's not always a positive thing, regulation. But the banks kicking and screaming into this new era of having to have a reserve price. And what I'll talk about in another video is why even having a reserve price hasn't fully solved the problem. It's made it better. The banks can no longer sell people's properties for R100 like they were doing. And I've got a spreadsheet which you should look for on our website, which shows hundreds and hundreds of cases of the banks doing this. But now, even now, it's properties are sold generally for about 50 to 70% of their market value. That seems to have become the norm, or at least that's the reserve price. Sometimes they get above reserve price, but that's where the reserve price is set. It's not enough. We need to do something about that. but at least you can understand now a little bit about why we have reserve prices at all in our country.